So I have a question, and it's prefacing a story that I want to tell about a place that I worked once that was really awesome. Have you ever worked at a place that you really, really liked working? I mean, when you got up in the morning, you weren't like, oh god, I gotta go to work. It was more like you got up and it's like, oh, hey, guess I'm gonna go grab breakfast and head on in, and see how everybody is. Have you ever worked in a place like that? I worked in such a place. And it was a very interesting place. It was a place called Tranquil Times. I'll tell you a little story about Tranquil Times. What made that place great was that the people there were very nice, and it was like I was going to work for my friends or for my family. And the co-workers, they weren't just co-workers. We all knew each other. We all had good rapport, and we were very much like a family working to a goal. It was a very open-minded place. They did a lot of things like alternative medicine, a lot of new age stuff, not new age, they were very, very into what they were doing. It was a clearinghouse of information on just about anything you could ever want to know about anything metaphysical. But where my job was there is that all the offices had computers there, computer in each office, and they all were linked together to the internet via network system. And my job was to keep all those computers working properly. And also I maintained the website, and later me and my significant other started working together to maintain the website. And it was just a great experience. It was a great experience. Very nice people. It was one of those things where you just couldn't wait to go to work. It was cushy. I didn't make a lot of money. I made very little money at it. But the money really wasn't the object of why I worked there. I enjoyed working there. There's places people count on you, and you have a purpose, and you help people, and you keep things going and keep stuff working. And it was nice. It was actually very nice to have a use in that group. And everybody knew it. They all called me the IT guy, but I don't even know if that was the proper title to even call that. But man, I set up tons of stuff. We had a really cool networking setup because we had a LAN, and it was spread across 2 buildings, 2 locations, and we had a backhaul between the 2 buildings, so you had 2 networks that were bridged together via 802.11 link, and that was a lot of fun. I learned a lot about setting up networks there. I mean, I have some theoretical education in it because I trained for it, but then you get out of school and you get out there and you find out just what'll work and what won't work. And one of the hardest things out there is in the town of Spring, where this was. It's a little town, little tourist town, and everybody had wireless. Everybody and their brother and their brother's brother and their brother's dog. So just getting the communications to work and work solidly was very interesting. I started playing with directional antennas and stuff like that, and I'd say the furthest I've ever gotten a link to jump to link up 2 networks, that's where I started. That's where I cut my teeth on it. But I've actually sent barefoot with no boosting equipment, no linear amplifiers, just a couple of whips or maybe a whip and a directional antenna. I've gotten a factory power level signal to go at least 2/3 of a mile, at least, and that's without any power boosting whatsoever, anything like that. And that was actually linking one end of the town to the other. It was a little museum that had a little Wi-Fi set up, and we wanted to share it over the tracks into the other part of town because the owner of the museum had a house there, and he wanted to share it with a few people there along with himself. So man, we worked and worked on that thing. Every time a train would come by, the signal would start going in and out as the cars went by. And we finally got enough height on the antennas, and we got proper antennas. We started with a 14 dB rod or whip antenna and a like antenna on the other side. And by the time it was over with, we had them about 30 feet in the air. And we had two flat panel antennas pointing to each other. They were 14 dB flat panels, and it makes a difference. You know, you're trying to take a signal that has no more radiated power, maybe a candle, if less. You know, if you were to look in town, if it were a light, you wouldn't be able to see it above all the other lights in town. It would just be barely a candle. And the trick is you got to take that signal, you want to concentrate every ounce of that signal down, not too far down because you don't want to beam the size of a pencil. You know, it'd be nice to have that if you could align the antennas, but you want it where you can at least best guess where to aim, you know, and then, you know, do your adjusting and tweaking. But we got that thing to work, and that was pretty cool. That was a neat thing. And then I was approached when they figured out what I was doing over at Tranquil Times. Crawfish Festival came into town one year. And I'll tell you about committees. That was a job, I didn't like doing that job very much at all. I told them the equipment that would be required, you know. And they just balked at the cost. It was a few $100s. They were going to make... They make... probably close to, if not more than $1 million when these things come into town, you know, and most of it goes into people's pockets instead of going where it's supposed to. But they wouldn't begrudge like $300 or $400 to build a couple of really good repeater towers and set them up in town. The way it was set up, it was going to be the main office, and it did kind of work. We got the first leg of it working real good, even though we had to pass through a bunch of old buildings and stuff. We set up a whip on the no, it was a flat panel on the office that was going to beam out to the first tower. And I built these towers. I built them out of 4-inch Schedule 40 PVC pipe. I built these towers that you could just roll out there or pull out there. You could fill the bottom. It had a square of PVC, and then in the middle it had a T going up, and the equipment was up at the top of the T. You know, you had your antenna array up there. And you had your box with the repeater in it, and it was a 2-radio repeater. I actually managed, for what they did finally give me, I managed to get one good 2-radio repeater. It was a Hawking product, and it was a very good repeater. So anyway, we got the first leg in, and it beamed down the street, and there was this little place down there as a pet shop type thing. They did pet boutique, you know, and they had an attic in there. So we put a flat panel antenna up in the attic, and we put a small repeater up in the attic there. So the first leg was done. It worked great. The people at the pet boutique, they had internet. They were happy, you know, and that was part of the payment for allowing us to put it in there. Is we would give them a node in, you know, so they could use their Wi-Fi there. And it would just go down the trunk along with all the other Wi-Fi signals. So they were happy. They were getting internet. It was all working. And then I went out there to where the fairgrounds are. There was a straight shot to the middle of the fairgrounds, and that's where we put in the big Hawking 300N repeater. You know, it had 3 antennas. It had 2. It was broadcast differential. It had the 2 antennas for the local Wi-Fi. And then it had a high power connection, which connected another flat panel to the repeater at the pet boutique, and it worked. The problem, I told them, you're going to need more than one of these, because when they go and they start putting these Ferris wheels in and these booths and all these metal structures, it's going to block that. You know, 802.11g and even 802.11n, a lot of it is line of sight. So lo and behold, I get a call, and you know, this isn't working. I go out there, I find out there's like a Ferris wheel, there's like 6 different steel booths all around it, and there's like all these trucks and trailers, and says, yeah, that's what it is, and it's what I said. I said, 1 tower will get you the immediate area down to the end of the road, but once all this stuff is moved in, it's going to block everything. You're only going to get so much bounce way out there, and that's all you're going to get. So I got blamed for that. I got blamed for that. And I remember the talk at the committee meeting. There was a group of them that were all for it. Says, man, we can get this. We can have the whole park set up so even when the festival isn't in town, we can have Wi-Fi all over the town, all over the park, and we can bounce. And then there was this one person in there. Well, I just can't justify the cost of putting all this equipment in. How is this gonna... Could not see past the end of the nose on their face how this stuff was gonna improve the town. And that one person is the reason. And I told him, well, I can build you this a little less. It's not gonna go as far, but it can get you started. It may, big letters, may cover most of the park. But when you start putting that stuff in there, it's going to not cover as much as it would with the park sitting open. And we did the field tests. We walked around the park with receivers and we checked everything and it worked good. But yeah, it's funny how you can tell people something and they'll still blame you for that crap. They act all surprised, They act all surprised when it does exactly what you said was going to happen. And then they're calling you up trying to get you to fix it. Says, yeah, if you got another repeater, I can fix it right now. There's actually a second tower over there built with an empty box where I can put it in there and bring it out. But I learned a lot working with people in that regard, but I also learned a lot about bridging networks and things, using very, very inexpensive... You can do a lot with inexpensive consumer grade stuff. If people are willing to put up a little money to do it, But that was the job I hated the worst. And that was just a one-shot contract type job. I was getting paid cash to do it. Ran down to Fry's Electronics, got what I could, had to get the very best I could find for that little bit of money. I think at the end they gave me... It would have taken about $500 to do the whole town. I could have done the whole town with maybe 3 towers, all interlinked in a triangular configuration, and each with its own local Wi-Fi node, all of which went back to the main office. I could have done the whole thing that way. And I ended up with a little less than $200. That's what they allocated for the Wi-Fi, to reach the whole park. $200. So... the core of the system, the thing that I had to start with, I had to get a couple of good flat panel antennas so I could at least jump the bridge, and it was just lucky I had one extra 802.11g repeater. It was a Hawking repeater, but it was like their entry-level one. Single antenna, single radio, which basically cut our transfer rate in half. But I was able to make it work. And then from that one to the other repeater, the Smart repeater, which was their flagship product at the time, I was able to bridge that over. And it just, when you were in range of the Wi-Fi, it was great, man. You could link up, you could surf. They wanted it so they could process credit cards and things like that because their vendors had started giving them these wireless credit card terminals. And it was either cellular or Wi-Fi. And it could have worked with Wi-Fi had I not had the corners cut right out from under me when I had to purchase the equipment. Because we did get, the equipment that we did get it working. And it worked great as long as you could get a signal. That was 90% of the problem was propagation. It just, you can't pass Wi-Fi signals through certain objects like metal walls and metal frames and metal structures and metal this and metal that, and every amusement park ride that was made of metal. Oh, did I mention it was all made of metal? And all these booths were encased in metal walled structures? Yeah! So, if the windows of the structures actually pointed in the direction of the Wi-Fi signal, they were getting it. But if the windows and stuff were pointing away, or these machines were on the other side, blocked by it, they weren't getting it. And I know some people say Wi-Fi works by bouncing around. When you're in an open field, there is no bounce. Your line of sight, baby. So you get something that gets in the way, and there's no other wall beyond it to bounce it off of. It's going out there, and it's going off into infinity and beyond, you know. But we got everything working. We had WPA encryption. We didn't do a WEP setup. We did WPA. I didn't do a Radius server. I don't have the knowledge to mess around with Radius, so I just left that alone. It was in the heady early days of playing with this stuff. So anyway, got it all working. But that just shows, you know, when you work with people that you like working with, that will listen to what you have to say because they know you know a little bit about it, and they trust your opinion on it, you can get a lot done. And I enjoyed working at Tranquil Times. That was why. I did phenomenal things there with networking equipment and with computers and the like. And I had good relationships with all the employees, and it was really great. But I will never, ever do a one-shot job for anything committee-based ever again. You know, that you're already working with your hands tied behind your back, and they are not going to give you what you need to complete the job. Because what I've found in that world is, when you first walk in there, they think they know more than you do. They don't trust you, and they're not going to fund you correctly. You know, you're going to be sitting there and you're going to be comparison shopping at Fry's somewhere, you know, trying to get the cheapest of the cheap, or at least the cheapest that'll still function for you. That being said, being that I had such tight constraints, hawking back then, I don't know if that's the case now because I don't have any of their products floating around here anymore, but the stuff I was buying back then, really good stuff. Really good stuff. When I set up Tranquil Times, that single radio repeater was one of the repeaters we used when we bridged from one building to the other. You know, we did some mods and put a more powerful antenna on them. It was leftover equipment. When they went out of business, that was the saddest day of my life. It was like somebody had died or like I had lost my family. Yeah, it was that great working there. And it still kind of hurts to think back. I think back to those good days. Yeah. But use some of that equipment to reduce the overall cost setting up the park. And we'll never do that again. We'll never do that again. From now on, the way I do it now is if I ever have to do another project like that again, they're going to get the price, the equipment up front. This is what I need. If you cut me back, I can't build it, and I cannot guarantee it. It's basically what I told them when they started cutting strings. I said I might be able to do it this way, but I can't guarantee the results. I can't guarantee the results, you know, because I don't know how that's all going to be laid out. But anyway, I'm going way down the rabbit hole with this, but just contrasting between two types of work, two types of things I've done. And I made a little money doing the thing for the committee. I think I made like $150 doing that. You know, just chump change. Enough that I could buy hamburgers and such for a while, you know. It wasn't bill paying money, but it was more just to learn what I could do, figure out if I could do it, because I had this dream. When I lived in Spring, I wanted to put the whole town under Wi-Fi. You know, I wanted the whole town where when you came into Spring, you could turn your laptop on and anywhere you could connect to a node and you could get on the internet. I had an idea of working an initiative with a few of the shop owners that were willing, and I had a few that wanted to help. We were going to set up 4 or 5 really good routers, and we were going to set up some access point nodes. We were going to get some really good repeaters. And we were going to link all these little Wi-Fi hotspots together to a main switch, and it was going to go into a really big backbone so that the people that logged in would have decent connection. We were even thinking about sharing the cost, you know. It just was that way, you know. Or people, the ones that couldn't share the cost, would just offer up a little bit of their bandwidth. We'd use QoS to keep it regulated. But we were going to we were going to put the whole town on repeaters and have Wi-Fi nodes. That would have been so beautiful. Because there also in spring there were a lot of people that were hurting, money-wise. They couldn't afford broadband. They couldn't afford it at the cost it was back then, man. Just to get 1 meg per second back then was like $60 a month, It was ridiculous. It was ridiculous what they were charging for broadband. You kids out there don't realize the break you have in the city, You get this cheap broadband that's super fast. Man, I can remember when it cost a fortune. I can remember when it was dial-up. I can actually remember when it was 300 baud. Before there ever was a such thing as the internet. That's how far back it goes. Then again, I was also doing things in MS-DOS from the command line, so... How many of you even know what a command line is anymore? What a C prompt is. Yeah. Those were times. Those were times. But like I said, man, I loved that job and I hated that other one. The job I loved, I really wish I still had it, because even though it was paying peanuts, I loved it. I looked forward to it every day. And I wonder if any of y'all have had jobs like that, where you really miss not having them now. It was a job that was like, it was the awesome job. The one awesome job you're going to get in your life, that you just can't wait to go do. I loved working on technology. I still do. I build computers now, but there's not really, out here where we live, there's not a huge call for it. Not in any large amount. I'm not seeing businesses that are using heavy amounts of it here, and there aren't a lot of people that have them here. So it's kind of like, well, you got the one geek for 50 miles, but there's nobody for 50 miles that has a computer, So, a bit out of my element, but at least I have a home, and that's the important thing. I keep myself busy building machines and giving them away. But I just thought I would post this. I know I'm rambling, but hey, it's a personal blog. I can ramble if I want to. If you want to pitch your 2 cents in, go ahead. Comments are down there. I wish they still had video responses. I'd love to see some of y'all that comment, because just having typed words, typed words are typed words. Sometimes it's nice to meet a person face to face and talk and just have a decent conversation, which doesn't happen a lot these days anymore. But I digress. Anyway, that's my video. There you go.